Tony Tompkins Show. Today I want to talk to you about Alex Jones. Now, not because Alex Jones needs to be talked about necessarily, but because he's an interesting character. He's revolutionary in many ways, but really he's a hoax. And I've been obsessed by the latest Sandy Hook defamation suit in the United States against Alex Jones, primarily because it was a clear indicator as to how damaging one particular person can be. And particularly, I think, if you're a psychopath, how ignorant you are of the impact that your behaviour has on other people. And the impact particularly that has psychologically and emotionally when you spread lies. Now, Alex Jones is known for the lies that he spreads, but what has intrigued me is the number of people that he has following him. So he could put out a video, as he did with the Sandy Hook massacre, and as a result of putting out just one video, he'd have, in that one day, he'd have something like 1 million viewers. Now, it wasn't through his viewership that he necessarily earned the money that he earned, even though I guess it's an important part of it. But basically, it's because he sells products. He sells a lot of crap, all of it crap, I guess. Most of it doesn't work. But there again, there are a lot of people that seem to think that it is going to benefit them in some form or another. And as a result of that, the number of sales that he has as a result of the crap that he sells works out to be millions of dollars a year. It was worked out at one point, I think, in just only a year or so ago, in fact, when he was talking about COVID, that he was earning something like $800,000 a day, putting in a lot of money, selling a lot of useless shit to a lot of useless people who just would buy anything if they believed that somehow it was going to make them better. I enjoyed watching the broadcast because it demonstrated a little bit more about how the judicial system works in the United States and how it does work, I guess, in most westernised worlds. And I think it's impressive to know that someone like Alex Jones, with the amount of accumulated wealth that he has been able to be, I guess, brought before the spotlight, to have people look at what he's doing and to challenge him and to place him in a situation which on many occasions clearly made him feel uncomfortable. He couldn't make much sense of what was happening around him. He couldn't challenge what was being said to him. He basically had to answer yes or no on most things. And even there, he avoided having to answer many questions by saying sometimes or maybe or occasionally, whatever, but without giving a specific yes or no answer. He clearly came to a position whereby he was able to accept that, and I think he did this prior to the trial, primarily because he needed to get some sort of public exposure and some sympathy for who he was. But he did come to the conclusion that the Sandy Hook massacre did not take place as he had told the narrative for many years. They highlighted the fact that when the massacre happened, 2014 or whenever it was, that years later he was still hammering the same old story, that it was actors that were acting the part, and that the kids were found later on. And he had, what they did hammer was the point that he had someone who was clearly discredited later on, but a guy that came on who simply said he was the expert, that said he had all these credentials working for the CIA, Secret Service, that he was an expert in school security and a whole host of things. And it was evident, though, that this man was just bloody crazy, to be quite honest. And yet they failed to check his credentials. They failed to discover who this bizarre individual was. And I think it's worth noting that one of the focuses primarily was over whether he was a journalist or not. Now, it was clear that he had gone to high school, but he hadn't graduated. He'd gone to community college, I believe, but he certainly wasn't a qualified journalist. He started off his life working in radio, He admired a few of the greats like King and others, and he aspired, I think, to be like them. So he found a niche whereby he could convince other people, also crazy people, or gullible people, or vulnerable people, about theories and ideas which they would latch onto and that they would imbibe in their very psyche. And as a result of that, he was able to develop millions and millions of viewers. Now, one thing has to be said about Alex Jones. To some extent, he is a genius. He was able to find that niche, log into it, and make some money from it. He was able to monetize it in the most interesting ways. Now, I guess the same thing could be also said of the most horrible person on this planet, namely Donald Trump. He also is very clever. And it's interesting how these narcissistic psychopaths can actually garner the support that they do in the way that they do it by simply spreading lies. And those lies seem to be attractive to a certain group of individuals. And because of that, they are able to find ways to make money from them. Because it appears to me that if you're gullible and stupid and you believe in the most innocuous, strangest, weirdest ideas that there are, then you are likely to give up money to support those people who hold those ridiculous ideas. And I just had a thought, in a bizarre sort of way, it happens around religion, doesn't it? Where some religious leaders who are full of the fervour and the passion and whatever can, and the craziest ideas also, not suggesting that Christianity necessarily is a crazy idea, but certainly people that are Pentecostal in nature and have these large churches are able to monetize what they do to the point whereby they also make millions of dollars. And it's as if the most rational people on this planet would not participate in some of these crazies. But those that are vulnerable, those that are uneducated, will tend to be attracted to these crazy people. Not that these crazy people like Alan Jones and Donald Trump are well educated. I don't believe Donald Trump is. I think he probably paid someone to do whatever he needed to do to get through his college degree. But Alan Jones certainly didn't go to college. So they are able to be smart enough to tap into the psyche of people who are wanting desperately to believe some of the ideas that they presented. And in this case, the way by which he defamed the families in Sandy Hook, particularly this particular family that's taking him to court, is really interesting. I found it kind of like riveting television, because there's this man who's all bluster and bravado and expresses himself in the most emphatic possible way. He has become undone. That in a courtroom where he can't behave that way, wanted to but couldn't, is interesting in itself. And he was very, very restrained. There were times when you could see his face redden with embarrassment, having to admit to some of the things that he had done. And there was a particular scene whereby they were doing a wrap-up at the end and just talking to the jury, and the people, the solicitor that was representing the parents was making some statements that were rather unkind, I guess, about Alan Jones, but doing it in a way which was still respectful within the court process. And Jones almost left out of his seat to have a go at this guy, and you could see someone from behind him pull him down. And there was no time that you could have a sense that he was remorseful for anything that he'd done. He said he had apologised, and he had, for the loss of the children. And he came to realise that everything he'd been saying over the years was untrue, but he never, ever apologised to the family for what he did, for the impact his behaviour had on them. And so there's one thing saying, look, I'm sorry that your child had passed away. There's another thing saying, I'm sorry for what I said to millions and millions of people about you, and the fact that you got harassed and you had threatening phone calls and people had threatened to murder you, people had fired shots through their house, done horrible things to these people as a result of this message that Alex Jones was spreading about Sandy Hook and the fact that it was staged. And it was also interesting to see him defend his position and use CNN as his foil. So it'd be like fake news. He wasn't fake news. He was just reporting the news as it turned up, as it arrived on his desk. But CNN, they constructed fake news. In fact, part of the Sandy Hook thing was about Anderson Cooper talking about the massacre soon after it happened and how he apparently had a green screen, similar to the one I use, behind him, and that they had constructed this event as opposed to it actually happening. And there's no way in the world that standard media process, even Sky News and Fox News wouldn't, I don't think, do that. But Alex Jones would. And he has been, at this point, taken to the first cleaner. There are many other cleaners to come because there'll be many other people wanting to sue him. I hope that eventually they find the money that they need to find rather than him filing for bankruptcy and getting away scot-free. It's a crime. It's a shame, actually, that it's a civil case. I'd love to think it'd be a criminal case, and I'd love to see that man locked up, because the message should be given to any other person who wants to spread terrible, terrible things about people like the kids, like the parents in this massacre. I would like to think that that they could be locked away for a long, long time for criminal behaviour, as opposed to just receiving a financial, in some cases, slap across the wrist for defamation. That's my take on Alex Jones, the hoax. So thanks very much for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.